save the date, April 25th at noon Eastern Standard Time. I have a 100% free, no strings attached webinar that I'm going to be teaching you about the 7 key factors that you need to know in order to manifest anything in your life, especially when it comes to your time and your parenting. Head on over to momisincontrol.com/join. And go to that website as well. I also have a free gift that I'm going to be giving you when you register. Just put in your name and your email at momisincontrol.com/join. And yes, if you can't make it live on April 25th at noon Eastern Standard Time, we will be sending out a replay. Have you ever experienced such a deep gratitude because you know what loss feels like? Or maybe you've ever felt that deep sense of connection with somebody else because you know what it feels like to be disconnected. Just like when the winter is here and we're hibernating, and when spring comes out and all of a sudden you feel the sun on your face. Why is it, as humans, we need to experience contrast in order to know how to live our lives? I often ask myself this: why did I need to get diagnosed with a stage 4 cancer in order to give myself permission to live? Why was it that when death came knocking on my door, I had to fight, not because I was afraid, but because I was afraid of not knowing how to live? Today, I'm really excited to share today's podcast with you. I interviewed a beautiful soul named Lindsay Pinkelman. And on June 30th, 2017, the unthinkable happened for her and her family. Lindsay sat down on a swing chair with her 2 boys, and the log that it was attached to was unknowingly, it wasn't secure. It rolled off its post and it landed on her. Thankfully, her children were safe. It broke her C5 and her C6 vertebrae, keeping her paralyzed from the neck down. So considering that's only been a little over a year, or about a year and a half, Lindsay was telling her story. I actually learned of Lindsay from her friend's podcast, Amanda Walker's podcast, Feel Amazing Naked. And I just had to have her on my podcast. One, she's a mother of 3. She's an ambitious go-getter. She's an adventure seeker. And then this happened. And it reminds me of our strength. Because when things like this happen to you, people will say, you're so strong, you're so brave, but you don't really understand how strong you are and what you're capable of until you have to be strong, until you have to be capable. And too often we're living comfortable lives. And I think for many of us, myself included, on a daily basis, we need a reality check that just because things aren't going our way doesn't mean it's the end of our world. And this is where I think the human spirit come into play. This is where I think, the intellect of we need to really stop looking outside of ourselves and have a huge reality check that we have running water. We have a roof over our head. We have food in our bellies. We have, access to internet. You are listening to a podcast. You have access to material. You have abilities, and you have the ability to take action, and you have the ability to move, and you have the ability to breathe, and you have the ability to think. And yes, maybe it's not 100%, or maybe, you have lost some of your limitations and you have to regain your strength, but you still have the ability. And so I'm really excited to share today's episode with you because Lindsay and I dive into the meaning of life. We dove into her accident and her recovery. We talk a little bit about parenting and what that parenting struggle is. And, I openly said, the things that we thought were issues in parenting before, are they issues now? And she said, no, you definitely get a reality check when you can no longer parent or become the mother that you used to be. So I'm really excited for this conversation. Lindsay is currently going through her recovery process. She does not have a platform. You can find her on Facebook, which is just Lindsay Pinkelman. So I will tell you, I'll spell out her name for you. It's Lindsay. Pinkelman. And you can just find her on Facebook and encourage her to share her story. And if you have a podcast or you know someone who has a podcast, then I suggest you reach out to Lindsay. It's women like this that inspire me on a daily basis to continuously show up even when you don't want to continuously push through the resistance even when you want to give up. So, yeah, that's all I got to say is I'm really excited to talk to Lindsay today, and I hope you were inspired by her journey. Let's dive in. We'll start now. Hello, Lindsay. So excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your amazing podcast. And you're like rocking it. What are you on? Number 500 and something?
400. This will be in the 400. So yeah, in 2019, I've been podcasting for 3 years.
That is incredible.
Yeah. And in 2019, I declared a podcast a day. So I'm podcasting every day. And the beauty of it is I can't censor myself. So it's like, because I have to produce so much content, I just have to hit submit. And I think too often that's part of the problem is fear of judgment, or is it perfect? So that will be a perfect segue into what we're talking about today of perfection. And I know you mentioned to me like, oh crap, like mom is in control. Don't ask me anything about parenting. But it's not about that. The reason why it's called Mom is in Control is when I started, I was doing target market research and all of these women just saying, I want to feel in control of my life. I want to feel in control. I don't understand my child. And these are all well-meaning women, right? Seeking support and going, what's wrong? Like, why am I throwing out all this money, time, and energy, and still it doesn't feel good? So I was just really drawn to your story. I think too often you and I said this before I hit record, but the things that stress us out, like, are not issues when you almost die and when your life is different. So yeah, I'm excited to hear more about your own personal journey and story with your accident and where you're at now. So if you want to take the listeners kind of just a nutshell version of what happened.
Well, I definitely think this is so appropriate because in my near-death experience, I really am the only one to blame, so to speak. And so what happened was it was June 30th, 2017. One of our best friends were visiting, and we just had a great day at our lake cabin, bunch of friends. Everybody had just left. And so it was my husband and I and our 3 kids. I have 3 boys. I have an 8-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. At that time, my 3-year-old was 16 months. And so you can imagine the exhaustion and everything else you go through. And so I was trying to get him down for a nap while my husband and the other 2 kids had gone into town. I live in Delta Junction, Alaska, and it's about 100 miles south of Fairbanks. And our lake house is about 45 minutes from our house. And so my husband and the 2 kids went in and checked the mail and got some stuff. And it happened to be our anniversary the next day. So he came back with flowers and a card. And we had just got done. I just got done finally getting Kip, our youngest, to bed or for a nap. And we sat down and we all had lunch, and I opened the card and we kind of had this moment together. And then we all went outside because it was gorgeous out. And so my husband kind of was sunning on the deck, and I took the kids down to the lake, and there was our swing that the boys had just got for their birthday. And it's this outdoor swing that, you look at all those kid outdoor toys and there's a gazillion. And so the one that they had just got for their birthday was this round sort of metal with a foam covering over it. And rope that it was intertwined, so it was kind of like a basket almost. And the direction said that you could take it off of the metal tripod stand that it came on, that you could hang it from other things with this attachment piece. And so on our property was this structure. It had two sawed-off trees and a four-sided log across the top of it, and it had two eyelets spaced where you could assume maybe the previous owners had hung a swing, because this spot just overlooks the whole lake. It's so pretty, and I have stared at it for a year. I'm like, I want to hang a swing there, right? So I bought that attachment that they said you could buy off Amazon, and so I had that, and I said, okay, boys, let's haul this swing up to the house, and we'll put it up, and we'll relax in it. So I get a ladder, hauled myself up the ladder, checked that log up top. I pushed on it. Mind you, I'm like 140 pounds, and this log is quite large. So I'm thinking, good to go. It doesn't move. I kind of look on the ends, and I'm like, okay, how is this thing attached? I didn't see any log screws, which should have been like a red flag for me, but I figured it's probably attached like some other way, or maybe screws are sunk down in the log or something. So I attached that middle, that swing attachment in the middle of the log, hooked it up. We get on it. I lay down. Our butts touch the ground. And I'm like, okay, boys, let's get out. I'll readjust it. So I did. We got back in it. I laid down. The boys are sitting. My oldest and the middle one are sitting next to me, Indian style. I was laying down, so my neck was resting on the frame like a pillow, and my knee was over the other side, and my heel was on the ground, so we wouldn't be swinging. I just wanted to do sun, because I was so tired. Not kidding, like 15 seconds later, 20 seconds later, that whole log rolled off of the trees that it was resting on. It's coming towards us. And this is the part where I don't really know what happened, but I put my arms up. It doesn't hit me. I think I felt it like nick me kind of, but it didn't hit me. It went, I think, over our heads, and then we just dropped. And mind you, my heel was on the ground, so we didn't drop very far. But however it happened, it was a perfect storm. And I broke my neck at later I find out. I burst fractured my C5, C6 vertebrae, and I'm severely bruised C2 to C7. So the minute I drop, I know I'm paralyzed. Like, nobody knows what that is like, but it was like a 45 second, almost like electrocuted feeling. And so I yell at my husband, who was up on the deck, and I'm like, Wes, I need air support. And so he gets up, and it was business from there on out. We have like this one spot on the deck where you have to like stand on one leg and hold your tongue a certain way, in order to get service. So he got service, and it was about 45 minutes for, the EMTs to get there. They're volunteer EMTs, to get to the lake. And then we had to arrange pontoon boat to come across the lake. And even at that point, like, I'm in a very difficult place on our property to get me down on a stretcher. So the first responders did an amazing, amazing job and stabilized me, not knowing what was going on. I never blacked out, which was good. I remember looking up at the sky and going, you cannot close your eyes. It was like the scene from the movies where the clouds just sort of pass by as they go to the next scene, I remember that, and I'm like, you can't close your eyes. Like, so at that moment, you kind of go into this fighting mode. My middle son gets off, and him and our dog are by my head, and he just starts praying, which was just the cutest thing. So they finally get me across the lake again on the pontoon boat, hop in the ambulance. Ambulance ride to Fairbanks is like 90 minutes. Get to the hospital, they do an MRI, and they call Anchorage because Fairbanks can't really do much for my type of injury. So I call Anchorage. Anchorage says yes. So they med flighted me from Fairbanks to Anchorage, which was like a 45-minute flight maybe. I get to Anchorage, then they do everything and all that, eventually have surgery. I'm in the ICU for 30 days because I was having blood pressure issues. And at this point, we're trying to figure out like where I'm going to go for rehab, because in Alaska, we don't really have the type of rehab I would need. So because my blood pressure, I wasn't stable enough to fly directly. So I had to go to a long-term care facility in Anchorage for 2 weeks. And that's where I kind of started therapy. And then after that, I was med flighted to Craig Hospital. And I was at Craig Hospital for 3 months. So I left Alaska August 30th. No, just kidding. August 14th. And I left Craig November 14th.
Wow.
And then
Where's Craig?
I flew to Arizona, which is where I'm from. And I stayed there for 5 months with my family to rehab some more and get stronger and stuff. And then came back to Alaska April 26th of 2018. So I was gone a whole year. And through that time, my husband flew back and forth with the kids in different increments. Like some flew for like 2 flew sometimes, all 3 flew sometimes. Some stayed with me longer. So throughout that whole year, I was able to see the kids quite a bit, which was really important for them.
I'm muting myself off and on, and I don't edit much. So like I said, we'll hear the dog in the background and all the chaos, and it's just a perfect storm for what life throws at us.
It
literally.
is, yeah. Yeah.
So now what is your situation and your health? Yeah. Prognosis.
So I left Craig very unhealthy. I developed a pressure sore on my back from being in a chair that was too big for me and trying to go four-wheeling when maybe I shouldn't have. And then had a mismanaged pressure sore for about a year, and then lost a lot of weight. So I'm about 5'9", and naturally you lose weight from, muscle and everything like that. But I ended up being like 110 pounds, which at that point I'm 5'9". So that was really like not a healthy weight. So I spent pretty much the entire first year focusing on my nutrition. And when you're a C5-6 quadriplegic, you don't have, like, everything about your body that's automatic is not automatic about mine. And so I don't really have that hunger switch, I guess, so to speak. I've learned that I think it presents itself more in blood sugar regulation and blood pressure. So if I'm feeling like I'm foggy and my head weighs 100 pounds, I often check, okay, did I take my blood pressure meds? When was the last time I ate? To try to figure out if it is that I do, in fact, need to eat. So I've spent the first year learning my new body, focusing on nutrition, getting those habits established again. And then this year is like my second year. So June will be the 2-year anniversary. And now I'm just starting my physical journey because I've pretty much got that stuff down. Like, I've got my body, I understand it a lot more. And now I'm ready for the physical piece. So it's really still about putting the oxygen mask on first and making sure you're in the best possible shape, I guess, or health, so that you can take care of your kids and your family. The only difference about my situation now that I hate, that I wish I could change, is I'm in physical pain every day. And that's something I was never used to. I did not have chronic pain before. So one of the door prizes, I call it, of being a quadriplegic or being paralyzed is nerve pain. And it's this bee stinging, fiery sensation that you have throughout your body constantly all the time. Some days are better than others. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, I say I'm at a 2. A 2 is a normal day where it's in the background. It doesn't really interrupt your ability to function throughout the day. You can kind of block it out. But some days I can go all the way up to a 7. And it is that sucks. That's a rough day because you can't focus on anything else. And the kids are doing their thing and you're working on homework and the other two are fighting or whatever. And it's like, you've got this physical pain you're trying to manage on top of all that. And those are bad days now.
And the pain is like, I remember I used to get like chronic bone pain after chemo because I went through chemo, and it was like, it just creeps up on you. Like, it's not like it's not like an all or nothing pain. It's just like, will be a 2, now a 3, now a 4. And it's like, if you have a high tolerance for pain, when you've been through trauma, you're like, I got this, until all of a sudden you're just like, what is going on? I'm not functioning.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And for me, when you've been gone for so long and you're trying to rebuild that relationship and trying to build your place back in your family and everything, I don't like using it as an excuse to not to be present. I feel like, yeah, you've got that high pain tolerance. You kind of tell yourself, like, almost like, suck it up. This is your situation. And the kids don't understand it, and they need you just as much as, I want to be with them and my husband, and trying to maintain that relationship. And so it's like, if I use my pain as an excuse not to be present, I don't know that I would ever be around. I'd be, in bed isn't any comfortable than being in my wheelchair. And so it's like, you still go back to like picking your battles almost, except they just look different. Those battles look a lot different.
I love, I love your openness to share your journey, because I heard you on Amanda Walker's podcast, and I'll actually link that below, just because people are probably thinking, who's Amanda Walker? Is it Love Yourself Naked? That's what it's called, right?
Feel Amazing Naked.
Feel. I'm like, is it love, feel Amazing Naked? So you were on the Feel Amazing Naked podcast, and you and I know Amanda well. Actually, she's been on this podcast too. I did interview her. So one is being so open and vulnerable to speak about your journey, and knowing that this isn't a decade later, right? Like, you're still in the thick of it. It's like every day's a new adventure. You're learning something new. And I'm curious, I want to come to it from like a perspective of like purpose, life purpose. I remember when I was diagnosed, and I had my, what I would call, come to Jesus moment. I'm like, none of this shit matters. Like 90%, not even 99% of what I've been stressed out and worried about, like, doesn't matter anymore. Like, who cares if I didn't respond to that person's text message? Who cares if I didn't, get the perfect gifts? I don't care what my house looks like. But there's this essence underneath of, why do we wait till something happens in order for us to realize, like, see the beauty and feel it of what life has to offer, like the true meaning of life? And I'm curious your perspective of that and parenting, just because it's the Mom is in Control podcast. Like, as a mother, what do you think your role is as a mother?
Well, I was questioning the same thing. Why does it take trauma to sort of awaken yourself to the important things in life? And for me, it was that moment in the hospital when you're laying there, your life is on the line, you're scared, you're anxious, and you have two choices. You can be happy or you can be sad. And it really comes down to that basic of an emotion and a choice. And I chose happy, and it has provided so many blessings in my life. It has provided me so much more of an open perspective. And I think it also has allowed me to be more present with the kids and be there for them. I am much more softer as a parent. It's funny, there's 3 generations in our house because we live with my in-laws. So we have the grandparents here as well. And it's sort of been an eye-opening experience to see how each generation sort of raises kids. Like, I know the importance of failing and how important that is for kids to experience, because clearly that's where we've learned the most. And I look back on my sports days, because I was an athlete growing up and played in college, and afterwards did sprint triathlons and biked, and I just hiked, and I loved all of that. And I look back and I'm like, I wish somebody would have just told me it's okay to fail, and that I played softball, and that you're going to fail more times than you're going to succeed. But when I raise my kids, I'm like, I don't want them to fail. Because it hurts. That emotion hurts, And I feel myself being so much more protective over that. And I need to do a better job of letting them feel those emotions, because that ultimately is going to be what helps them grow. So a little bit more about me. I'm a school counselor, and I was a high school counselor for 8 years. And then I moved to the elementary school for 1 year, and then that's when I got hurt. So on the parenting side of it, prior to me getting hurt, we had a autism specialist come through our elementary school, and she happened to come by my office, and we were talking about behavior management and things, and she recommended this DVD to me, and it's called 3-2-1 Magic. You can get it off Amazon.
I've heard of it. Like, so many people swear by it.
OMG. Yes. It saved my life in terms of now. So I used it on I think Lincoln. My middle one was, he's 5 now. So he would have been like 3.5 when I was hurt. Something around there. Yeah. And I used it on him. One time is all it took. And the premise is that when you get in those power struggles, and your child is constantly, but mom, blah, 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 but mom, blah. And you just say, okay, well, 3 is 5 minutes of timeout, and you're at 1. And if they continue that power struggle, you just move to 2. You don't battle back and forth. You don't, compromise. You just simply say 2. Well, now what happens is they are the ones that have to choose if they want the consequence or if they want to make the right decision. And it puts it on them and takes the power struggle out. And it took one time of following through with 3, and it works like a gem every time. And so now, being injured, one of the most frustrating things, there are 2 things that will make me go into rage and make me want to run somebody over with my wheelchair. And it is when I cannot do anything about my 3-year-old's tantrums and flies. 2 completely opposite spectrums, but a plague of flies will send me into rage like no other.
I never thought of that. You can't see them.
No, and it's mosquitoes, bugs in general. Anyway.
Interesting.
So I am that behavior management works like a charm on my 8-year-old and 5-year-old. And my 3-year-old, I do it. It's difficult, but he's getting there to the point where he's understanding, I will follow through. And sometimes I have to get somebody else to be able to physically move him into timeout or something like that. But I think that's been the biggest struggle for me, is everything I do is verbal now, versus before maybe I could, pick them up and put them where I want and try to keep them where I need to be and stuff like that. But I've had to depend so much on my voice, and that gets so exhausting, just as it was before, you know. But now I have a tool. And so I guess my parenting has really become so much more talk it through, talk it out. I feel like a recorder most days, just like most moms do. So my parenting struggles are still the same, regardless if I'm in a chair or not.
Do you find, what's your perspective on being, okay, so before I was diagnosed, my belief was I had to be with my children all the time, and I was the only one that could take care of them. And then I would spend 2 weeks at a time in the hospital, not as long as you, but I couldn't see them. They couldn't come in. It was, you know, there was a huge disconnect there. And when I did see them, I had no energy. So what's your perspective on that? And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're eating so much mac and cheese. What if they have too much screen time? What if other people are taking care of them the way that I wouldn't? What do you think about that when there's distance and space? Are you like, it's ridiculous, the beliefs women have about themselves.
Yeah. So it's no longer mom is in control. It's mom had to give up control. And that was a very difficult piece, and it still is. Like, I have so many people in my life that are helping raise the kids. More importantly, Kip, the youngest. And I think I'm fortunate that I think they are respectful in understanding and modeling the same ways that I parent through, again, voice and making the kids make the right choice. I don't want to be known as the mom that's yelling from the wheelchair. And so that is probably the number one driving force in my parenting, is I don't want them to look back on their childhood and think that mom was always yelling at them. And so I think that's why it takes so much energy, because I try to remain so calm and talk through it with them. But you're right. Like, when you go through something that's so traumatic, you want to be around your kids all the time. And being a working mom before I was injured was such a struggle for me, because I wanted to be home with them. And that full-time working mom balance took me a lot of years to get used to. And then I got to the elementary school, and my oldest was in kindergarten. And I'm like, this is the best job ever. Like, I get to go to school with my kids. They're paying me for it. You know, like, I get to do what I love to do with kids. I mean, it was just such a renewing experience for me. And now that I'm hurt, like, it's like I don't want to work. I want to be here all the time. But I also know that that may not be what's the healthiest choice either, because I need to figure out my purpose again too. And so I'm in this space of trying to write a children's book based on my experience in the wheelchair, kind of working on some other business stuff of being a school counselor and working with other school districts. And so I'm kind of working on that with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm trying to work on driving again. That's always like such a long-term goal, but I think will be so important for my independence, and for also with the kids and I, like, we can go places together, and it probably looks more like mom's in control instead of having somebody always be with us. So I'm looking forward to that. But my heart is always tugged, because I do feel like I need to be here all the time to make up for that year that I was gone, and the trauma that's in their life. And they reference it quite a bit. My oldest doesn't talk about it as much, but the middle one does. And then the youngest didn't remember, but he asks questions based on what he hears from the older two. So he's like, Mom, did you break your neck? Where did you break your neck? And, you know, did you fall from a swing? And so he's interested in the story, I think.
Interesting. My kids will say to me, I can definitely tell they have like some PTSD, but if I have a headache, like just a little headache, they're like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, it's just a headache. So I have to watch myself because I'm a pretty strong personality, meaning like I can do it myself. And, there's light and dark to both of that, right? You can say, there's great independence. I think that helps with recovery time, but it also, you can burn out, you can overexhaust yourself as well. And from what I'm hearing from you, it is this like internal strength where you said you had to make a decision to choose happy. Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because how can you choose happy when you're still living in a state of chronic pain?
Well, you have to give up control. I'm religious, and when I arrived at Providence Hospital in Anchorage, I remember being in the emergency room. There was a cross above the door, and then they said they were going to bring in the chaplain. And I thought, oh my God, like they're reading me my last rites. Like I seriously thought I was
that would be my thought too. I'd be like, oh, I'm dying.
I know. And so I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so then when the neurosurgeon came in, I remember specifically asking him, am I going to die? And he told me no. And I was like, okay, maybe I am okay, type thing. But so the chaplain was a very important part of my journey early on when I would have anxiety when the doctors would come by because I didn't know what was going on and I didn't have surgery right away. And so so much of that conversation was anxious for me. And so I always asked the doctors to go outside of my room and I would have the chaplain come in because that was the only way that I could relax. But more importantly, like early on when I had visitors come in and they would be crying around me, I'm like, you guys, you cannot cry in here. Like I'm okay. I will be okay. Like, but you crying, my personality and obviously being a school counselor, I've got that inner helping. Like I want to help them feel better. I can take care of myself. I want you to feel better about the situation. And so I always wanted them to leave with the hope that everything's going to be okay too. But in that happiness piece, when you give up control because you have none, it's pretty liberating to just allow whatever's going to happen. You cannot get out of bed. You cannot pick up and leave. You have to rely on the family around you. You have to rely on the prayers being sent. You have to rely on the trust of the doctors and the staff. And so when that is around you, again, your basic choice is, what are you going to choose to be to them? And we know what it's like when somebody's mad and angry and sad. Like, nobody really wants to be around you. They're going to be like on eggshells because they don't know if they're going to be yelled at or, cussed out or whatever. And so when you choose happy, people want to be around you. People want to help you. People want to go out of their way to make sure your day is better than what you're going through. And when you have those experiences and nurses that aren't on staff come by and see how you're doing, like that just builds and builds and builds. And you see the beauty in life again, and you see the good in people, and then the blessings start rolling in. And that honestly is what has happened to us. Like, I cannot tell you how God has been present through this whole situation. I don't know if you've felt it, but I just feel like when you choose that, you are able to see the good that's happening around you.
Yeah. I remember diagnosis, like when I walked out of the hospital. I've told this story many times, and I grew up Roman Catholic, but not like practicing. And then I was like a rebel against it. Right. So God, pardon?
I'm a late, I'll call late blooming Catholic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Late blooming Catholic. That's so funny. So my relationship, like 5 years ago, I say universe, divine, something bigger than myself. But the word God, I had so much that there was so much like blocks and resistance around it and stories and beliefs that I couldn't do that. But I remember being diagnosed and I walked out of the hospital that night and I looked up and I said, you finally have my attention.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. I was like, I don't know who or what I'm talking to, but I'm finally listening to you.
Yeah.
And it just,
Listening is powerful.
yes. And it reminds you of like, it's like the parent-child relationship, you know, the child that won't listen. And you're like, oh my God, can you just put on your shoes? Like, let's go. Why are you making life so difficult? It's the same as us. Like we have to listen. It's there. How has the presence of God been involved in this process for you? What else have you witnessed?
Well, I think what you just said is powerful. It's listening. We spend so much time talking and responding that as a society, we don't sit and listen. And even with our kids, we're so busy trying to solve the problem, fix the situation because we've got 100 things on our mind or we're dealing with our physical pain and we just want it to stop. And we don't sit and listen to what they're actually trying to say to us. And because kids don't have the capacity and developmental skills to communicate the way that we do as adults, they're trying to tell us something. But again, maybe we're just too busy to listen. Mm-hmm. And when I learned to listen to God and the messages that He's trying to send to us, I feel like that's when my relationship started to build. Now, I will go back and say that there are times where I'm like, dude, God, that's like not quite what I meant. For instance, prior, right, you're like, it would be so great if I had a cook and somebody to clean the house and I didn't have to worry about laundry. Well, here I am, a C5'6" quad, and I've got somebody that cooks for me, somebody that does my laundry, somebody that cleans, and I'm like, oh, what, dude, God, like, wait a second. Like, you answered my prayers, but like, I didn't want it this way, you know? And so I do find at times, too, like, that still happens where, like, I feel like I pray, and then I'm trying to listen, and something will happen, and I'm like, wait a second. That's not quite what I meant. And so I'm like sitting right now at a really big crossroad of and a major, probably one of the biggest decisions in my life I'm sitting on right now. And in fact, I need to make it today. And I'm trying to figure out what God wants me to do because I'm scared. I'm so freaking scared right now. It's ridiculous. And He hasn't quite given me the message, and so I feel like I'm really like going in blindly, and it's pretty scary. And so I guess that's where, again, mom has to give up control. Mm-hmm. I gotta just make a decision and go, and that's kind of where I'm at with my parenting too. Like, I'm kind of in control, but there are things that like I can't, or I don't think I can do about the situation. And I have to give up control to how other people are going to handle it, whether I like it or not, because I just can't I can't do anything about it. And those are the hard moments. Those are the growing moments, the growing pains, we'll call
them. Can I ask you an uncomfortable question? I don't know. I'm sure someone's asked you this before. Sure. Someone's asked me multiple times if I ever feel guilty if I've hurt or ruined my children's childhood because of my disease. And my personal response was I had to trust that something bigger was at play and I couldn't take on that responsibility. But I see also the strength that it's given my children. So I'm curious your perspective on that.
I agree with you 100%. There was this banner at Craig. In fact, my mom always quotes it, that there were like college banners and sports team banners from where people were from all over the country. And the one outside of my room said, "My life didn't begin until I got hurt." And I kind of see that in some ways. I feel like my relationship with my kids is stronger. I feel like as boys, unfortunately, they've had to grow up in some ways a lot faster. But I think they're also so much more aware of things than what they were before. And the empathy, you were talking about that earlier when they're concerned when you have a headache and stuff. The empathy that comes out from your kids when you go through something like this is pretty amazing to see. And I feel like as a family, we are able to do hard things. And I feel like, and I hope that that gives the kids self-confidence that they too can do hard things once they kind of get to that age where they begin to understand it. We don't hide anything about my situation. I'm very open about it. In fact, my 5-year-old kind of right now is very stuck on the whole death thing. With the younger brother coughs, he's like, "Is he gonna die?" And so we're constantly like having to talk through that. But I feel like it just opened like this world for all of us that you were saying earlier, like the little stuff just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. And I don't know, going back to the original question, like, I don't know why it takes a traumatic event for us to figure that out. I wish it didn't have to be that way. But, you know, we all have obstacles, challenges, and struggles. And it's just how you're able to look at them, I think, that allows you to grow a lot more as a person and as a family.
I love this conversation. I'm like being mindful of time. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could literally talk to you all day. Something that you just said, I was like, oh yes. Oh, before I had to put my own oxygen mask on, my whole business was surrounded by the child. And this whole journey for me in motherhood has been my son. I have 3 boys, 14, 9, and 6. And when I had my oldest, it was like, keep showing up, like personal development on steroids. Right. So, but I see too much out there. And I think this is where parenting is really swung, because before it was like children didn't have a voice. And now it's like they have a voice, but yet we're losing ourselves in parenting. And it's like, give. And, oh, I don't have time for myself. I'm like, ladies, we need to realize that we matter. We matter. Like, we need our space. We need our time. We need to do those things that fill us up. So what fills you up now that you're like, what's Lindsay up to in her world?
So I think what fills me up now is when I can do physical activities. When I can think that I'm that badass again, that I can just climb a mountain or hurl a softball. I don't know, but something that allows me to exert energy. What I miss the most is that when you go on that run and it's that crisp air and you get that deep like breath and you're exhausted, but it's such a feel-good feeling to exert yourself. I miss that feeling like you would not believe. And so now that I'm back at physical therapy and I push myself there and I see results and I'm slowly getting back into the swimming pool, and I have goals to maybe be that girl that does a sprint triathlon again down the road, be that girl that sort of defies the odds, or that can say like, oh my gosh, like look at her, she's up in the mountains again with her kids. And I have such a great support network that wants me to do that too, that they're doing everything possible to try to make that happen for me. That is what fills my spirit on the inside. To be honest, I get scared of the day that in my mind, maybe things are in cruise control and I'm maybe in that realization point of this is it. You know, this is your life and you're not going to be getting more function back. But I really try hard not to allow myself in that space. But I think the times I have those conversations with myself are the late at night when you're trying to wind down from the day and you're in bed and your head is spinning and all those thoughts come in, and I really try to filter them out. But when I wake up and I start the day and I get ready, like I just have this passion to keep driving forward, and defying odds. Like that's my hope. It happens, but
it will.
I won't stop trying. I am such a believer that our body is capable of so much more than we give it credit for. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's not a cure for paralysis right now, but there's a lot of people that are spending time working on it. And maybe by the time, you know, our lifetime is up, there will be one. And that'll be a really great day.
I remember being obsessed with radical remission and like understanding the research and the science that physicians could just not comprehend. And I was like, I'm going to be that. I'm going to be that. And so when you said just defining the odds, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to bawl my eyes out, because it is that inner drive. And who fucking cares what the future is going to bring? But it's having that like relentless trust and faith that you just got to show up and push yourself like 1 degree more than you would every single day. And when you have that drive, I don't know about you, but because you see yourself every day, you're like, nothing's changing. And yet you're like, okay, 6 months ago, I couldn't do this. Do you find yourself doing that as well?
Oh yeah. One of the things that I've always been a goal setter. I've always been, a vision-oriented person. And one of the things Amanda, our mutual friend, kind of reminded me of was the small habits, the small things. And if I was to look back over the last year and a half, like I see how that's built. One small decision for me to have a smoothie every day that had the protein I needed, the oils I needed, the fiber I needed. And I've done that consistently for a year and a half. Like, look at where I'm at now. My pressure sore healed. I'm like 117 to 120 pounds. I feel stronger than ever on the inside because I made that consistent habit and it's stuck. And I do get frustrated the day by day because sometimes I don't see results. But then I have so many people remind me that, like, no, like, again, look where you were. And it's the small habits of making sure that as much as I don't want to drive 90 miles to go to physical therapy, I got to get in that car and take Dramamine and go. Like, I just have to do it because of it, and just sucks. I'm buying like a bottle of Dramamine every 2 weeks because I take it so much. But yeah, it's that sacrifice to not only be better for myself, but to also be better for my kids. And that reminds me of something we were talking about earlier when we maybe try to be strong for our kids. I try to be mindful of that balance of also showing them that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to not be tough, and it's okay to let yourself go, so to speak, and be raw in front of them. I find myself maybe needing to do that a little bit more because I don't want them to think that I don't have that other side of the emotion. I think it's important for them to see.
Yeah, strong women have there's that saying of like, strong women never need anyone. They're the ones taking care of everybody else, right? Obviously people are physically taking care of you. But it's interesting. We all need everyone. And there's the light and the dark to both sides. There can be the determination, and then there's the fear and vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think life is about balance, and however you balance that emotion is what maybe keeps yourself in check, and maybe where you find control. I don't know.
Yeah. I always say, people are like, oh, in control, that's funny. And I was like, it's actually just feeling good and surrendering. That's what control actually is. Because when we're trying to hang on to something for dear life, like, you have to let that go and trust. And that's where the vulnerability comes in. Like, oh, what if I lose it? What if? It's like, we have no evidence of that. So just let go, jump, see what happens.
And you'll always find a way.
Yeah.
That is kind of, your mom in control, and everybody kind of has their motto. Mine, even when I was working with high schoolers and they were in that moment of vulnerability where they're making this major life decision for themselves, I'm like, it's okay. Like, you'll always find a way. And if this plan doesn't work, you'll find a way for another plan or plan B. And so anyways, that's the name of my consulting business, is Find a Way Consulting. And I'm just a believer in that. Like, when you give up control, it's okay, because you always find a way wherever you're going.
I love it. So fail often. Let's celebrate our children's failures. That was one of the big things that I took away with. It's like, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe at the dinner table tonight, I'll be like, what did you fail at today? I remember hearing Sarah Blakely. She's the founder of Spanx at the dinner. Yeah.
I watch her Spanx a lot. She's been on there.
Yeah. At the dinner table, her dad was like, what did you fail at today? And it was like a celebration. I'm like, I like this, and just keep going, try and try again.
Yeah. So out of my experience, I created a scholarship called Adapting to Adversity. Oh, wow. And that is very much what it's based off of. Is I don't really have a GPA requirement, but you do need to have a plan, after high school, and it could be in one of the 5 pathways, college, military, trades, work. But you need to write an essay about a time in your life where you had to adapt to adversity and discuss the ways that I don't ever believe you overcome anything. I feel like you adapt. And so they need to discuss ways that they did that. And so most of that is based just off of the idea that you just said. Like, tell me a time when you feel like you were failing or failed, and how did you adapt? And I think focusing on the how did you adapt piece is a teachable moment, because they're going to experience that again. But if they learn and become comfortable and find confidence in how they overcame that, that'll build to the next time and the next time.
Think about how many times people ask that in like a job interview.
Yeah.
Talk about adversity and, how did you overcome that? They want to know your problem solving skills. They want to know, your resiliency factor. Awesome. So Lindsay, where can people find you if they're just like, oh my gosh, this woman is amazing. How can I get more of her?
Yes, you can find me on Powered in Alaska on Instagram. And you can find me on Facebook, just Lindsay Pinkelman. My whole journey is on Facebook. So you can kind of scroll down and see all the different things that I did in therapy. And I chronicled my whole time at Craig, because that's when I started sort of sharing my journey and my rebuilding and stuff like that. So I will admit I am not a huge poster, social media poster, because I don't have a lot of people around me that take pictures. And it's really difficult for me to take a selfie. As you can see, my angle of my camera, because it's like right here. So, I mean, if you want to see my double chin all the time, like I could probably.
That's so funny.
Post
your selfies just from like up the nose.
Yeah, that's what they would be. So anyways, I need to do more of that.
You have to get one of those like things where you stick it on your phone and then you just ask someone to like put it on the wall for you.
Yeah.
And then there's a timer.
Ooh, all right. So I gotta build up my my technology around here so I can take more.
Just have phones, little cameras or phones all over the place, and you'll just be like, selfie, selfie, selfie.
I love it. I love it. That's
Give them
awesome.
to the kids. Say, guys, take some pictures of me.
I do. I feel like I need to do that, because I feel like especially this summer, as I start doing more activities outside, like I do feel like people are interested in seeing what I'm up to as I build my support group, I guess, through this journey. So I feel like in some ways, like taking pictures and posting is almost a way of like giving back.
It's very weird. I don't know for you, but for me, like the more my business is about sharing my story and sharing stories. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not that special, because I believe we all have a story, right? And it just because something tragic happened doesn't mean, oh, now look at me. It's like, no, everyone has a story. Like everyone has something that we can talk about. And if we all just realize that, that's how we help each other. That's how we give back to one another. But yeah.
I think I'm in that pre-confidence stage. Like you just totally called me out, because it's kind of how I feel right now. I'm like, I got nothing to say. Like, who wants to listen to me, and who wants to see me post every day? And I just haven't found that inner confidence to be like, you do have a story and you should be sharing it.
But you don't find it. I always use like the poop and the vomit emojis. Like I'm always sending that to people. I'm like, if you don't want to vomit or shit your pants, then you're not headed in the right direction. I'm like, just post. It could be something simple, but oftentimes I'm like, this is dumb. Why am I sharing this? And then I get so many comments. I'm like, it's just the stories we tell ourselves. But confidence comes through action. And I think that's kind of a myth. I don't feel like anyone can perceive someone to have confidence, but on the inside, sometimes they're like, I'm not enough. I can't do this. It's just management, just like fear or something else.
Well, thank you for giving me that teachable moment, because I would say that's where I'm at, is this fear that, and I tell people this, right? I tell people before my injury, I had this fear that was always stopping me from like going to the next step and growing. And there's so many women in my life that I follow that are really kind of have overcame that and are on the other side of it. And I'm like, I feel like in some ways that's the one thing that after I got hurt went away. Like, I don't care anymore. I was almost dead. Like, you can't hurt me. You can't nothing stops me. Like, I was laying in a hospital bed, like not knowing what the future was. Like, why should I be scared anymore? And the further I get away from that experience, the more that fear comes back. And so I think, I just need to go. I just need to, and you giving me that teachable moment, hopefully will give me that drive to just knock fear in the face.
And I'll kick your butt if you keep in contact with me. Trust me.
Yeah. Okay.
Trust me. Right. Ask Amanda. Ask anybody. It's like when we're asking, like you said, circling back, why did this, when you're listening to yourself, and I'm like, okay, keep sharing. Like I'm in the process of writing a book and I'm like, I don't want to do this. And someone's like, then give it up. And I'm like, but I don't want to. And they're like, then shut up.
Yeah.
Like, shut up. Then do it. So we realize how much drama we cause in our lives because we're just afraid to do something. And it's the stories we tell ourselves. So thank you, Lindsay, for taking this time out of your day. And the ladies will follow you. I'll post the links to your social media in the show notes. And they'll see more and more and more of Lindsay now that I'll be like, come on.
Yes, I will challenge myself to post more.
Perfect. Oh, thank you, Lindsay.
It was so great to meet you, and thank you so much for the invite.
Are you secretly hoping your child does as you say and not as you do? Well, guess what? I've teamed up with Big Life Journal to help give your children the tools and strategies they need to live their big life. Their growth mindset journals empower children to face challenges head on, think positive, and embrace mistakes. You can also check out their printables and growth mindset activity cards. It doesn't matter if your child is a toddler or entering high school. Discover how to live in a growth mindset is a lifelong skill we all can learn about. Head on over to momisincontrol.com/big life. And when you use the promo code MIIC until June, you'll get 10% off all your purchases. That's momisincontrol.com/big life, promo code MIIC.